Dan.
How do you say my name?
Halliwax.
Halliwax. Halliwax basement builds.
Halliwax.
Close. Halliwax here, back in the shed. Tonight I have TXQ's V2. It looks a little bit different than what they have advertised. That's because I Halliwaxed it. Or should I say, Halliwaxed it. I wanted to do a little video explaining what I did to the TXQ V2 and why I did what I did. So full disclaimer, TXQ has sponsored this video by sending this to me free of charge. If you haven't seen already, there's a link in the description below where Anakin Starkiller and I go over this thing. To sum things up real quick, Anakin Starkiller designed this model, he sent it to TXQ, and TXQ made some small changes and mass produced it. But the TXQ V2 that's up for sale on all these sites doesn't look like this, and I'm going to explain why. So here we have the TXQ V2 heavily Halliwaxed, or heavily Halliwaxed. As you can see, this is the V2 in the Alec Guinness configuration. This is what it looked like during A New Hope when Alec Guinness is dueling Vader. When Starkiller and I were examining this here in the shed, I quickly learned that TXQ anodizes the silver. So before I started anything, I stripped all the anodizing off to a clean palette. And then once the anodizer stripped, I chemically aged everything. Originally, I was planning on putting some Anakin Starkiller stencils on here. He made a set of stencils, and he actually gave me permission to sell them on my Patreon. But my Cricut, the machine I use to cut these stencils, has a heck of a time cutting the booster. And it was just not feasible enough for me to do a run with that Cricut. It actually melted down. My own stupidity trying to make this thing work, I fried another Cricut. And now that I have a fried Cricut, and I don't have any more stencils, I figured I'd give this an Alec Guinness tribute. So with the anodize off and a fresh coat of acid on there, I ended up painting it all black and giving it the Alec Guinness tribute. All these color combinations can be found on my Patreon. I have an in-depth video on all the steps I've done to get it to look like this, and all the paint codes and full disassembly and what you need to do to make it look like this. That video is available now on my Patreon. There's a link in the description below where you can find that. So the top of the minnow is painted black, not 7578 flat black, a different flat black. And I heat stained the nipple here to give it a little bit of a different color to it. The wind vane is a Trooper Trent color combination on the wind vane. Again, the black that I chose you can find on my Patreon. The clamp is actually a DS2 clamp. The TXQ clamp comes wicked chrome, and I ended up taking some 400 grit sandpaper to it. You can see this in the video. And I put some grain into it, and it's very thin plating, so I actually burnt through it when I vapor bathed it. I ended up giving it a vapor bath, and you could see the finish underneath. So I ended up scrapping that clamp because it was just, there's no way to recover it. And I took a DS2 clamp that I had, a leftover DS2 clamp, and I weathered that up with adding some grain and some nicks and dings and dents, and I'm happy with that. The transistors here are from Roman Props, and again, Roman sponsored this video by supplying me with these transistors free of charge. He has the best transistors on the market. They're the only ones I use. They're stainless. You can actually heat stain them if you want to give them a little bit of a tarnish. They have a beautiful text on them. I use them on all my V2 builds, and Alec Guinness tributes and Kenobi replicas. Every single one gets the Roman Props transistors. He actually has a new slip-on washer. I don't know if those are available to the public yet. Those that he sent me might have been just prototypes. But he has a slip-on version where you can actually just slip them on. These screw in and lock in underneath the transistor, whereas his new ones, they slide right on the transistor. So you do a little dab of glue and you're good to go. Again, the whole clamp modification and how I installed the transistors and the machining that I needed to do to make these transistors work can be found on my Patreon video. The booster again is the same black as everything else, I had to upgrade the set screw because TXQ uses a stainless set screw, so I added a regular black set screw there. The red toggle switch I added in there. That was a little tricky, but we got that to work. The pommel is acid aged and very light weathering, and I added the infamous milling circle. Right here, it's just a circle, a regular circle. It's just a circle, a regular circle. Not a square, a circle. That's a little inside joke there. But, so the bubble strip is a Roman Props bubble strip, and I had to modify the circuit board in there because I broke the TXQ tactile switches off. By removing the card and test fitting, I actually broke one off by accident. So luckily enough, I had some bigger ones down in the basement, and I soldered one on. Then I purposely broke the other one off and soldered that one on to make sure that the card sat flat in there. It's actually, the top one is actually in there crooked because when it broke off, it broke part of the PCB board off. So I had to like clock it in there and make this little extension with an arm, and I have some scrap wire, but I got it to work, so that's good. I actually can't believe I got it to work. The lever is actually it looks like a DS2 lever, but it's actually a TXQ lever that Starkiller gave them. Starkiller gave them the model, and they did a very little, few little tweaks to that. Like they got this little dovetail on the end of the lever, which is great. And the finish is, the plating is very, very nice. But they copied the DS2 lever like really good. What else? So again, the cradle that the tactile switches sit in is a chrome finish from TXQ. I ended up painting that black so that it hides in there pretty good. Oh, the wind vane. The wind vane, TXQ really deviated from the Starkiller model. It's like not even close to what we interpreted or what the original prop looks like. So I was going to machine a millimeter off of it to kind of hide it, and then I decided to scrap that, and I filled it. Again, you can see on Patreon the steps that I took to fill that, and then I machined that. To the right spec, so the wind vane is fixed. The only thing I can't really fix is the booster. TXQ's got this really rounded booster here. It's pretty, but it's not true to the prop. The prop is more of a straight cut. I can't really machine that because if I remove the material, now the pommel is going to look like it's sticking out too much. So I just left that alone. There was no way for me to fix that. And with all the machining that I've done, I figured, I machined the wind vane, I'm fooling around with the pommel, I might as well just do the rings. So I ended up machining the rings too into the DS2 spec, so they're all uneven rings. But so that's what I did to Halliwax, the TXQ V2. The emitter, the FX emitter cup, is actually a little bit bigger than the static, and that is because they ended up going with the spec of a perfect cast emitter. So this is actually a V3 or a perfect cast emitter. The FX plate is like 2 millimeters wider than the V2 plate. I don't know if you can tell, but it's a little bit wider. Another thing that I ended up changing was all the set screws in this areola was 3 millimeter. I changed it to 4. My thinking was, I work on V2s almost every single day, and it's 2 Allen wrenches. With this setup, I changed the areola set screws to 4 millimeter. That way I could just use 1 Allen wrench. But realistically, the booster unscrews. So once you have the pommel attached, you don't need to take the pommel off. So I really didn't have to change these to 4 millimeter. I would just stick with the 3 millimeter and use that 1 Allen wrench. But it is what it is now. One more thing that I would ask TXQ to change in future runs is The pommel is attached with this set screw, and I've been practicing my twirling and my spinning and my tricks with this, and I find that the pommel comes loose very quickly. So if TXQ, I think TXQ's got the right idea by having this on spin, have the booster on spin. So if I was them, I would actually incorporate these two pieces together, machine the booster and the pommel together, correct this section here and have it so this is together, because you can just change the FX cup, you can just change the FX pommel like that, and there's no need to take the pommel off anymore. Maybe it's cheaper for them to machine it with it being a separate piece, but realistically we don't need that, and it's prone to failure when spinning. It comes with like a ton of sound fonts. This is actually the SN V4 Pro, so it's a whole new experience. The app works flawlessly on my phone. Actually, the phone is in the attic right now doing the aerial view. Otherwise, I'd show you how I control it with the phone. The other generation of the app didn't work at all for me. I had to use an old iPad, my mother's old iPad, and it worked fine on that, but it wouldn't work on my brand new phone. So I've always thought that was funny. But this one works flawless. And there's a guy called Frugal Jedi on YouTube, and he's a programming whiz when it comes to this SN stuff, and he's figuring out all sorts of tips and tricks to edit these. So I would encourage you to go check out his channel. He's got a lot of information on there, and that's how I learned most of my stuff, is all from him. You can hear how loud the speaker is. It's kind of obnoxious. One of my favorites.
Power off.
There's like 25 sound fonts that come on this board. It's crazy how many fonts the TXQ includes. Way too many for me. When I'm done, I'll end up putting 4 or 5 Cyberphonic fonts on here and calling it a day. Just way too many fonts for me. I get confused and lost. Eek. But the SN V4 Pro board is unbelievable. It's crazy what these guys are getting them to do. I seriously encourage you to go check out Frugal Jedi on YouTube and John at Collector's Outpost. He's got a lot of videos too on editing and fooling around with these boards. I've learned a lot from these two guys. I really encourage you to go check them out. So that is my TXQ Alec Guinness tribute. I've always wanted one of these, and I finally able to own one. I have to give a personal shout out to everybody involved in making this happen. TXQ for sending me this hilt, Roman Props for supplying some of the parts, and my boy Anakin Starkiller for actually making this happen. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be where or who I am today. So I have to give a big shout out to him because it's the truth. If you want to purchase a TXQ V2, there's a couple links in the description below with companies that I purchased from and have had flawless transactions with, so I wouldn't be hesitant to purchase from them again. If you want a V2 like this, TXQ doesn't offer them like this. They offer them clean, like that. But I do have a Patreon video going into full depth on everything that I've done, and the paint codes and steps and tips and tricks on how to make this possible. So there's a link in the description below to my Patreon. Well, that said, I want to thank you all for watching. Keep an eye out for the next video, and most importantly, be kind to one another. This is Halliwax, out.